They say every marriage has secrets, but I never imagined mine would be the kind that rewrote my entire life. My name is Emily Carter, I'm 34, and for most of my marriage, I thought I was living the dream. The perfect husband, the beautiful home, the kind of life people double tap on Instagram without realizing how much work goes into it. At least, that's what I thought. Matthew Carter was the man everyone envied me for. He was charming, successful, attentive. The type of guy who remembered birthdays, brought flowers home for no reason, and volunteered to grill at neighborhood block parties. Women in my circle would sometimes half-joke, "Emily, if you ever get tired of him, send him my way." I'd laugh it off, secretly proud of the man I thought I had. But looking back now, I see the cracks were always there. Small, hairline fractures that widened over the years until the entire facade collapsed. It started with the business trips. Matthew worked in finance, or at least that's what he told me. He often traveled for client meetings in Charlotte, Nashville, sometimes even New York. At first, I didn't think twice. I trusted him. I packed his bags, kissed him goodbye at the airport, and even sent him good luck texts when he said he had a big presentation. But then the trips got more frequent, longer, and little things didn't add up. One time, I found a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket, but it wasn't the chain his company usually used. And the date didn't match when he said he was gone. Another time, I noticed his credit card statement had charges for toys and children's clothes from a store we never shopped at. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he bought gifts for his niece. Maybe his company booked a different hotel that week. Maybe I was being paranoid. Because that's what we do when we love someone. We explain away the shadows until the whole house is dark. Still, the unease grew. Matthew started locking his phone, turning it face down whenever he set it on the counter. He worked late more often, coming home with that tired but satisfied look people wear when they've been somewhere they shouldn't. One night, he came home smelling faintly of baby powder. I laughed nervously, asking if one of his coworkers had spilled something in the office daycare. He brushed it off with a grin. "You have the wildest imagination, Em." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But then came the night I couldn't ignore. I was doing laundry, the most mundane chore in the world, when I picked up his suit jacket. In the inside pocket was a small photograph, not of us, not of family, but of a little girl. Blonde hair and pigtails, gap-toothed smile, holding a stuffed bunny. On the back, in a child's handwriting, one word, Daddy. My hands trembled so hard I nearly dropped it. My first thought was that he was hiding an old family photo, maybe of his niece. But the date printed on the bottom corner was recent. Too recent. I shoved the photo back where I found it before he could notice my discovery. That night, I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling while he slept peacefully, wondering who she was. Why he had her picture. And why she called him Daddy. Was I going crazy? Or was my husband living a life I knew nothing about? The doubt ate at me. Every laugh, every kiss, every casual "I love you" suddenly felt like theater. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I tested him. The next morning over breakfast, I casually mentioned how nice it would be to visit Charlotte with him sometime, see the city he spent so much time in. He nearly choked on his coffee. "Charlotte? It's boring, Nothing to see. You'd hate it." But the way he said it, sharp, defensive, too quick, told me everything I needed to know. There was something in Charlotte he didn't want me to see. And I was going to find out what it was. Backhand index pointing. Have you ever stumbled on a clue that made you question everything? What would you do if you found a photo like that in your partner's jacket? Tell me in the comments. Fire, and don't forget to subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries for more shocking betrayals, twisted secrets, and revenge stories that will leave you speechless. After I found that photo in Matthew's jacket, sleep became a stranger. I'd lie awake at night listening to his steady breathing beside me, wondering how many lies he'd told with that same calm face. Every late meeting, every flight delay, every "sorry, work is killing me right now." I replayed our entire marriage in my head, wondering which parts were real and which were rehearsed. The photo haunted me. That little girl's smile. The word Daddy. I couldn't let it go. So I started small. The next morning, when Matthew showered, I checked his wallet. Nothing unusual except for a grocery receipt from a store across town we never visited. On his phone bill, I noticed a number that showed up again and again. Hundreds of texts. Dozens of calls. Always late at night or during his business trips. I copied the number onto a sticky note and shoved it deep in my purse, my heart pounding like I'd committed a crime. That afternoon, when he said he was working late, I called the number. A woman answered. Her voice was warm, casual. Hello? I froze. Hung up. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. Who is she? The next day I called again, this time from a blocked number. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Matt, she said, her tone playful, familiar, like she'd been expecting him. My stomach dropped. I hung up before she realized it wasn't him. There it was. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof he wasn't just traveling for work. But I still didn't know the full picture. I needed more. I dug through Matthew's briefcase one night after he fell asleep. Inside was a folder with printed bank statements. And that's when the betrayal deepened. There were transfers, large ones, from our joint savings account to an account I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars, drained slowly over months. At the same time, our savings had dwindled, and Matthew kept blaming market fluctuations. It wasn't the market. It was him. He wasn't just lying to me. He was stealing from me. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. More receipts tucked in the folder. Children's clothes, school tuition, medical bills. None of them ours. And then another photo slipped out, this time of the same little girl, but older, standing with a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, pretty, holding the girl's hand. The three of them smiling like a family. My blood turned to ice. The woman. The child. The money. The trips. It all snapped into focus. Matthew had another life. Another family. The betrayal cut deeper than words. He hadn't just cheated on me, he'd built an entire home somewhere else, while draining mine. I felt sick. I wanted to scream, throw the papers in his face, demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. Because screaming wouldn't give me the truth. It would only alert him that I knew. And I needed to know everything. So I played my part. Smiled when he kissed me goodnight. Nodded when he said he was flying to Charlotte for 3 days of client meetings. Pretended not to notice when he slipped his phone into his pocket every time I walked into the room. But this time, I wasn't just waiting. I was planning. When his next trip came up, I told him, "Why don't I drive you to the airport? Save on parking." He hesitated, then forced a smile. "Sure, babe. That'd be nice." I dropped him off, kissed him goodbye, and watched him disappear into the terminal. But I didn't drive home. I parked across the street and waited. 40 minutes later, I saw him walk out the other side of the terminal, not toward a gate, but toward a parking lot where he got into his own car. I followed. My heart hammered as I trailed him through back roads, my palms slick on the steering wheel. Finally, he pulled into a quiet suburban neighborhood. Stopped at a small blue house with a white picket fence. A little girl ran out the front door, squealing, "Daddy." She leapt into his arms. The woman followed, smiling, wrapping her arms around him like she'd been waiting all day. And Matthew, my husband, kissed her. Not a quick hello. Not a friendly peck. A real kiss. My chest constricted, breath shallow. I felt like I was watching my own funeral. Because in that moment, the man I'd built my life with, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, became a stranger. And I knew the truth. I wasn't his only wife. I wasn't his only family. I wasn't his only anything. Backhand index pointing right, what would you have done in that moment? Stormed out of the car and confronted him, or stayed quiet to gather more proof? Comment below, I want to know what you'd do. Fire, and if this story has you hooked, don't forget to subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries for more shocking betrayals, jaw-dropping twists, and revenge stories that prove karma always delivers. The night I saw Matthew kiss her, his other woman, I drove home in silence. No tears. No screaming. Just silence so heavy it pressed down on my chest. I walked into our house like a ghost. The life we'd built together suddenly felt like a stage set. Our framed wedding photo? A prop. The throw blanket he bought me for Christmas? An accessory. Even the bed where I lay beside him every night? A lie. But I didn't confront him. Not that night. Not the next. Not even when he came home 2 days later with flowers in hand and a tired smile on his face. The meetings went great, babe. Clients are happy. I missed you. I smiled back. Kissed him. Played the part. Because if Matthew had built an entire second life in secret, then I had to play my role even better. I wasn't going to throw accusations at him. Not yet. I wasn't going to give him the chance to spin a story, to gaslight me, to cover his tracks. No. I was going to know everything before I made my move. So I started quietly collecting. First, the finances. Every bank statement. Every transfer. Every suspicious charge. I copied them, scanned them, hid the files in a folder labeled Charity Receipts on my laptop. He'd never open it. Second, the photos. I drove back to that blue house during the day when he was at work. Parked 2 streets over and walked past casually, sunglasses on, phone in hand. Snapped pictures of him mowing the lawn, playing catch with the little girl, kissing the woman on the porch. Each click of the camera was like a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I knew. Third, the proof from the woman herself. I needed to know her story. Was she innocent? Did she know about me? Or was she part of the betrayal too? So one afternoon, when I saw her leaving the house alone, I followed. She stopped at a grocery store. I waited until she came out with her bags, then walked up, my voice trembling but steady. Hi. I think we need to talk. About Matthew. Her face went pale. You know Matthew? I pulled my phone out, showed her a picture of me and him at our anniversary dinner. Her jaw dropped. My name is Emily, I said. I'm his wife. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her bags. Wife? No, he told me he was divorced years ago. That was the moment I realized she wasn't my enemy. She was another victim. Her name was Rachel. She'd been with Matthew for 7 years. 7. They had 2 kids together, the little girl I'd seen, and a baby boy. She had no idea about me. He told her he was divorced, that I was just the ex who couldn't move on. I wanted to vomit. He hadn't just lied to me. He'd lied to her. He'd built 2 households on a foundation of deceit. Rachel invited me inside her car, and we sat there for an hour, piecing together timelines. His trips with me overlapped with his trips to her. His stories to her matched his stories to me, just tweaked enough to fit. The money? He'd been funneling our joint savings into paying for their mortgage, their bills, their vacations. He wasn't living a double life. He was financing it with my trust. By the time I got back home, my heartbreak had hardened into steel. I wasn't just hurt. I was furious. Matthew thought he was clever. That he could juggle 2 lives forever, fool 2 women, drain 2 households. He thought I was too naive, too trusting, too in love to ever look behind the curtain. He had no idea who he was dealing with. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the mountain of proof I'd gathered, bank records, photos, Rachel's testimony. And I realized something. Revenge wasn't just about leaving him. It wasn't about yelling or throwing his clothes on the lawn. That would give him the drama he could twist into sympathy. No, revenge would be about exposure. The truth laid bare, in front of the very people he wanted to impress the most. And fate handed me the perfect stage. Our 10-year anniversary was coming up. Matthew had been planning a grand party, rented a hall, invited friends, family, coworkers, clients. He wanted to flaunt our perfect marriage like a crown jewel. Little did he know, it would be the night his entire kingdom crumbled. I began preparing. Quietly. I saved photos on a flash drive. Compiled bank statements into a slideshow. Even added the recordings Rachel agreed to make, capturing Matthew's sweet lies about how he couldn't wait to marry her when the divorce was final. Each piece of evidence was a dagger. And on our anniversary night, I was going to plunge every single one of them into the image he had built. I smiled when he talked about the party. Nodded when he bragged about the guest list. Pretended to fuss over flower arrangements and catering. Inside, I was counting down the days. Because Matthew Carter thought he was hosting a celebration. But what he didn't know was that he'd planned his own execution. Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if you found out your spouse had another family? Keep the secret and walk away quietly, or expose them publicly like I'm planning. Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your take. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries for more shocking betrayals, twisted lies, and revenge stories that will leave you breathless. The weeks leading up to our anniversary party were torture. On the surface, everything looked normal, even happy. Matthew was more affectionate than usual, almost smug. He'd wrap his arm around me at dinner, kiss me on the cheek while we shopped for decorations, whisper things like, 10 years, M. We made it. People envy what we have. If only he knew what was coming. Behind that smile of his, he was planning a performance. A flawless display of the devoted husband and successful provider. He'd invited family, coworkers, business partners, even a few local officials. He wanted witnesses to our perfect marriage. And he was going to get them. But instead of seeing the fairy tale, they were about to watch it go up in flames. The night of the party, the ballroom shimmered. Strings of golden lights, tables draped in white linen, champagne glasses lined up like soldiers. Guests in elegant dresses and crisp suits filled the room, laughing, toasting, congratulating Matthew and me on 10 beautiful years. I wore a long emerald dress, my hair pinned up, makeup sharp enough to cut glass. On the outside, I looked like the picture of a proud wife. Inside, my heart was pounding with anticipation. Matthew was in his element, working the crowd like a politician. He shook hands, told stories, made everyone laugh. He kept glancing at me, his smile triumphant, as if to say, see, M? This is the life I promised you. If only he knew. When dinner was served, I barely tasted a bite. My mind was on the USB drive tucked into my clutch, holding everything I'd collected, the bank statements, the photos, the recordings. Finally, as the plates were cleared, Matthew tapped his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice smooth, commanding attention. 10 years ago today, I married the love of my life. Emily, you've been my rock, my partner, my everything. And tonight, I want to share with all of you just how much she means to me. The room erupted in applause. Some people even stood. He basked in it, soaking up the admiration. Then he looked at me. Why don't you say a few words? I rose slowly, my smile polite. My knees trembled, but not from fear, from adrenaline. This was it. I walked to the podium, accepted the mic. For a moment, I let the silence build. The crowd leaned in, expecting a tearful tribute, maybe a funny story about our wedding. Instead, I said, "You're right, Matthew. 10 years is a long time. A lot can happen in a decade. Trust can be built. And trust can be broken." A ripple of confusion swept through the room. Matthew's smile faltered. I clicked the remote in my hand. Behind me, the screen lit up. The first image, Matthew holding a little girl in pigtails. The same girl from the photo I'd found in his jacket. Gasps echoed around the room. The next slide, Matthew on the porch of the blue house, kissing Rachel. Then, bank statements showing money drained from our joint account into his secret life. And finally, the audio clip Rachel had recorded, Matthew's voice, clear as day, saying, "Don't worry, baby. As soon as the divorce is final, we'll be a real family." The room erupted in whispers, gasps, even cries of disbelief. Matthew's face went white. He rushed toward me, hissing under his breath, "What the hell are you doing?" I held the mic steady. "I'm showing them the real Matthew Carter. Not the man who plays the perfect husband, but the man who lies, cheats, steals, and lives 2 lives at once." "Emily, stop," he barked, his mask cracking. But I didn't stop. I turned back to the crowd. For 10 years, I stood by this man. I trusted him. I believed in him. And all the while, he was building a second family behind my back. Using my savings. Using my name. Using my life as a cover. So tonight, instead of celebrating, I'm liberating. I'm done being his prop. The room went dead silent. Then, slowly, people began to clap. First one. Then another. Until the entire room was thundering with applause, not for him, but for me. Matthew stood frozen, humiliated, exposed. His business partners whispered angrily. Family members shook their heads. Some guests even walked out, unwilling to look at him. I set the mic down gently, smoothed my dress, and walked off the stage. As I passed him, I leaned in just enough for him to hear, "Happy anniversary, Matthew." And then I kept walking. Out of the ballroom. Out of the marriage. Out of the lie I'd been living for 10 years. Backhand index pointing, right? What do you think? Was exposing him at our anniversary party too harsh, or exactly the revenge he deserved? Let me know in the comments. Fire, and if you're loving this story, make sure to subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries for more shocking betrayals, twisted lies, and the sweetest revenge stories every week. The night of the anniversary party was the last time I saw Matthew standing tall. When I walked out of that ballroom, I left him surrounded by whispers, stares, and the wreckage of the life he'd built on lies. He looked like a man stripped bare, every mask ripped off in front of the people whose approval he craved the most. But the true downfall? That came later. The very next morning, the fallout began. His phone blew up with angry messages from business partners demanding answers. Some of them had invested with him personally, and now they wanted out. Others simply wanted distance from the scandal. Reputation is everything in finance, and Matthews was shredded in a single night. By the end of the week, 3 major clients had pulled their contracts. His boss, who'd been in the audience, red-faced as the evidence played out on screen, called him into the office and suspended him pending internal review. In plain English, they were done with him. At home, things were no better. His parents, who had always adored him and bragged about him, called me privately to apologize. They said they never imagined he was capable of something so cruel. I could hear the disappointment in their voices, and I knew Matthew felt it too. But the harshest blow came from Rachel. She kicked him out. When she learned the full truth, that he hadn't just lied about being divorced, but had siphoned money from both households to keep his circus running, she was livid. She told him she'd never let him near the kids again without a court order. So there he was. Jobless. Homeless. Estranged from both families. And me? I wasn't broken. I was free. The divorce was brutal, but not for me. I had everything I needed: the documents, the bank statements, the recordings. My lawyer called it an ironclad case. Matthew tried to fight, of course. He cried in court, begged for leniency, claimed he was under stress and didn't mean to hurt anyone. The judge wasn't impressed. In the end, I got the house, most of our assets, and freedom from a man who had stolen 10 years of my life. He walked away with debt, shame, and a reputation in ruins. At first, people whispered to me, "Emily, aren't you devastated? Don't you feel like your whole world just collapsed?" But here's the thing, when the world you thought you had turns out to be a lie, losing it isn't devastation. It's liberation. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I didn't have to wonder where Matthew was at night. I didn't have to explain missing money or cover for his excuses. I started new routines. Morning walks without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Dinner with friends who told me they were proud of me for my strength. Even Rachel and I stayed in touch, unlikely allies bound by betrayal. She once told me, he thought he was playing 2 women. But really, he lost both of us in one night. And she was right. One evening, months later, I stood on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. I thought about the woman I used to be, the Emily who trusted blindly, who smoothed over cracks, who explained away receipts and late nights. That Emily was gone. In her place was someone sharper, stronger. Someone who understood that trust is precious, but once shattered, it can't be taped back together. People ask me if I regret the way I exposed him. If maybe I went too far. I don't. Because Matthew built his life on performances. So I ended it with the biggest performance of all, only this time, the truth was the star of the show. He thought he could juggle 2 lives forever. But in the end, he lost both. And me? I didn't just survive his betrayal. I glowed from it. I built a life without lies, without gaslighting, without the constant fear of what I might find in his jacket pocket. The sweetest revenge wasn't the humiliation. It wasn't the divorce settlement. It wasn't even the whispers of people who now saw him for who he really was. The sweetest revenge was this: freedom. And the knowledge that while Matthew Carter's story ended in disgrace, Mine was only just beginning. Backhand index pointing right, so tell me in the comments, would you have exposed him the way I did, or walked away quietly and let karma handle it? Fire if you loved the story. Don't forget to subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries. Every week, we bring you shocking betrayals, twisted secrets, and revenge stories that prove the truth always comes out. Speech balloon, and if you've ever faced betrayal, know this: you are stronger than the lies, and your story isn't over yet.